So I'm never sure when it actually goes live. There's like a slight delay, but it's coming up now. And then I'm going to share the link in the Telegram channel. There we go. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Okay, put this in the Telegram channel. There we go. All right, and guys, help me. I'm not going to really be looking at the comments section of YouTube. So if you guys see something, let me know.
Yeah, I'm sure Aaron will jump in there.
But otherwise, we're live. So welcome, everybody. Today is April 13th. This is the Permissionless Software Foundation Technical Steering Committee meeting. I am Chris Troutner, and I'm joined by the regular cast of crew here. Not all of them, but some of them. Let's go ahead and do a quick round of introductions. David, why don't you start?
Sure. My name's David R. Allen, and I am a big fan and supporter of Permissionless Software Foundation and the work of Chris and all the other fine people that are doing good work.
Nice. Go ahead, Aaron.
My name is Aaron Shoemaker, and I've been with I'm going on a year anniversary with you guys. So
Cool.
I've been working on the NFT side of things and the visual side of things and utilizing BCH for that. BCH, eCash, AVAX, whatever works.
Nice. Go ahead, Stoyan.
My name is Stoyan Zhekov, and I was helping with the JavaScript libraries and examples.
Nice. And then we're joined by a new presence, Maravas. I hope I'm not butchering that. If you want, give a quick intro.
It just means an earthling. So I'm just a rookie here, and if I have any extravagant questions that may help me achieve my goals in creating a decentralized platform for the indigenous people of Estonia, then I shoot away, but otherwise I'm just listening. Thanks.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for joining. And yeah, helping small communities is something that's near and dear to my heart. I live in a small community, and I'm constantly like brainstorming ways to foster local trade outside the purview of the state here in my own local community, and building tools for other local communities to do the same. So thanks for joining.
Yeah,
okay,
thanks for creating this awesome foundation. Yeah, go on.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will get to the agenda. Okay, I guess I can turn that off. Okay, so as we've done in previous weeks, we have this meeting every 2 weeks, and this is basically our opportunity to celebrate technical achievements over the last couple of weeks since our last meeting. And but we are growing, and some of the things we're going to talk today about, I want to get into an open discussion about a tentative roadmap for the PSF and sort of some of the opportunities. I mean, we've been building a lot of tech for a while, and there's, I think, some very big lucrative opportunities on the horizon. And the question really is, how do we want to approach them? So we'll get to that. But as we grow, I'm hoping to spin off additional focus groups from this meeting for specific technologies. The one that I have in mind in particular is the DEX, and the bridges for trading tokens. I think that has the potential to very quickly accelerate and become not only extremely profitable, but also attract a lot of mind share. And
Yes.
And if that happens, then we'll probably want to spin that out as its own group. But for now, we're just having these more informal meetings and just sort of celebrating our achievements. And so we'll go through the agenda, and then at the end of the agenda, we'll have just a roundtable discussion to discuss whatever we want to talk about. It's technical in nature. So let's get started with that. So the scope of this meeting, I should get this a little bigger. the scope of the meeting is to discuss the PSF core software. So I've got a list here of a lot of the different software. I actually need to add a few items to this list. But this is the core software that the PSF maintains, and all other things like the decks and other things are built on top of. And so in terms of tech updates, I wanted to call out that the cache stack documentation has been published. And this explains, this is going to end up being like our canonical documentation that explains how all the software that we build and maintain fits together in order to build Web 2 and Web 3 apps. So right now it's at this sort of, there's a link in the agenda if people want to click on this link. And it's got this weird URL. Eventually, probably next week, it will land at cachestack.info. I registered that domain name, so it will eventually be there. The documentation is done. I just need to do that final part of moving it to its own domain name. But if people go there, there are links to our Telegram and our Gitter channel. We have 2 channels in case one ever gets censored. We have a fallback, and they're bridged, so anything that happens in one channel gets reflected in the other. We've got a link to the video section on the PSF website. This is for people who are more video oriented. That seems to be a better way to communicate like step-by-step directions. And then, but really the site is based around the docs. So you can either click on the read docs button or the read docs button up here. And what it does is there's an introduction, and then it talks about the front end, the local backend, and the global backend. Lots of graphs, but the main, and it talks about the differences between Web 2 and Web 3, because everyone's got a slightly different definition of what those are. So one of the main objectives of this documentation is to be very clear on what we mean by Web 3. And then it starts at a very high level, walking through like big boxes of like the whole stack of software of how a phone app goes all the way down to the blockchain. And then the following sections go into more depth onto the 3 main sections: the front end, local backend, and global backend. So I really encourage people to read this. Feedback, it's all open source. There's links to the GitHub repo where this documentation lives. So if someone sees a typo or they have a suggestion, they don't need to ask for permission. They can just go to the GitHub repo and submit a pull request. And that's the best way to contribute to this documentation. Let's see if there's anything else. So yeah, I just really encourage people to go there. If anybody wants to understand what the PSF is all about, this is what we're all about. This is the software. This is the reason we exist. Or at least it's how we exist. The reason we exist is up at the top here, that our focus is on censorship resistance, self-sufficiency primarily, and then everything else is just technology to achieve the PSF mission, which is to help individuals protect their privacy, circumvent censorship, and engage in economic activity.
So down at the cache stack, Web3's cache stack, just to clarify here, the IPFS Service Consumer REST API, that is something that if I'm connecting my application, I'm running, and then I'm reaching out to an IPS service provider, which could be anybody that's running a cache stack, a Web3 cache stack.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the scope of Web 3, not Web 2, Web 3 is different in that it has many redundant backend services that are offered for free by the community. I mean, they're incentivized to do so. And so the service provider is the mirror image of the service of the consumer. So unfortunately, this image is really small. Let me see if I can, there we go. So up here you have a phone app, and that's going to call a JavaScript library called BCH Consumer. And then that is going to call IPFS BCH Wallet Consumer, which it bridges across the IPFS network to the IPFS BCH service provider. Mm-hmm. And so it's really doing is it's creating a bridge across IPFS. So
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So, and then, so if somebody's running that cache stack, I'm bridging across to them for my application. If I'm running my own cache stack, I'm essentially bridging to myself. Is that
Yeah.
how it is? Okay.
Yeah. And what's nice about this, I mean, graphically, it looks like more complex than the Web 2 scenario, but actually in Web 2, you have to worry about DevOps and networking and firewalls and all that stuff. And in IPFS takes care of all of that for us.
Yeah.
So you spin up the IPFS service provider on whatever computer anywhere in the world that you want to run your global backend on. You spin up the wallet consumer anywhere in the world on a device that you want to consume that data on, and the networking all just magically happens.
Awesome.
Please, I also have a question.
Yeah.
Does the documentation includes also the like a minimal hardware requirement to run every of these blocks? And does it have like you had some like already packages before, like I think Docker images for all of the parts. So does the documentation have like download link where to go for this block, for example?
Yeah. So you're referring mostly to the global backend. And so this section talks about that, where to find the Docker containers, where to find the pre-sync databases. And then the video section here, you asked about target hardware. And so the video section calls out the target hardware. So for consumer devices, we're targeting the Raspberry Pi 4 in terms of a development environment, like a lightweight development environment. So this can obviously run on a bigger computer, but this is sort of our hardware threshold we're trying to achieve. And then for the global backend, we have this video down here in the DevOps and infrastructure section. So the global backend is targeting a desktop computer with 32 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte hard drive. Okay, so that's that. Yeah, so good questions, guys. And I hope that, this is exactly the kind of feedback that I'm glad I was able to have a quick answer to your questions. That tells me that things are moving in the right direction.
Well, and then didn't Cool Cleaner, he set stuff up on Cloud Stacks, right? And if I remember
I think
right.
he does, yeah.
So like you're not limited to just running your own computer. You could also fire it up on some Cloud Stacks, but also, be careful because AWS, they're known for censoring things every now and again. So you could be running it on that and then all of a sudden be gone. So, maybe DigitalOcean or like Vulture might be better options for that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. In this introduction, I call that out in that, like, there's nothing wrong with Web 2. We're not necessarily trying to move away from Web 2. It's here, it exists, it works great. The problem is that it's expensive and it's really easy to censor. And those are the two problems that Web 3 solves. It's much less expensive and it's very difficult to censor. And so it's not that Web 3 is better than Web 2. It's that the use cases are different, that Web 3 caters to use cases that Web 2 does not cater to. So that's really important to keep in mind. And that's probably one of the biggest different, like, I'm not the type of guy that's going to like get on Twitter and tell everybody like Web 3 is the future and it's awesome and da da da. It's like, no, it's like a blockchain. It's used for very specific reasons. And if you don't have a specific reason, then you probably shouldn't use it.
So. One more question. So when this thing moves to cache-stack.info, there will be like Web 2 DNS, right? So it's pretty easy to censor this thing. So is there some, they will be saved, these documents, they will be still on GitHub, right? And just some pointer will point to them.
Yeah. So I'm sort of refining that. So you guys have seen like the paper wallet. If you go to paperwallet.fullstack.cache, it just loads this temporary splash page that takes you to the actual app that is on Filecoin. So, you notice that took a few seconds. So I'm trying to make that a little faster. But anybody who has this actual hash can retrieve this from IPFS, and so it can't really be censored.
Well,
go ahead.
and if it's pinned by more people, like, let me get out of my screen here, and if it's pinned by more people, won't it help the resolution depending
Yeah.
on location?
Yeah, the more people who pin it, the better. Like,
Well,
if we create an NFT group and every child in this to point to these pages, it will become manual and it will be indexed because it will be one group and it will be censor like resistant.
Yeah, that's exactly the direction I want to head into, Stoyan. You're kind of jumping ahead. In fact, jumping ahead in the agenda, but let me just show you one of the things that's on the agenda that I was going to show you guys.
I totally agree with Stoyan, because I'm about to pin it right now for you.
Nice.
So
Appreciate that.
It would be nice to be able to figure out how we could cluster pin without giving full control to everybody's individual nodes too.
Yeah, well, so well, we're kind of jumping around, but I guess that's okay. Well, so I think we need to step back, because right now, what Stoyan was referring to with group tokens. So in BCH, we have the SLP tokens and we have our own NFT specification, and they're a bit different. They work differently than, they work the same, but the architecture is different than in the Ethereum world. And so we create a group token, which is like, I like to think of it like a stem cell that hasn't like specialized yet. So you create a group token like paintings, and then you generate NFT children from that group token. So you have the Mona Lisa and you have, a Picasso. Like, those are specific, unique paintings. And because of this architecture, someone can just query the one single group token and find all the children NFTs that were generated from that group token. So if you query the painting group token, it will link to all of the, the Picasso and the Mona Lisa and all the actual unique NFTs. And so Stoyan at a hackathon put together a decentralized DNS system for this, for looking up web pages easily. You can just query one single token and then resolve subdomains from that group token, which would be the child NFTs. And I'd very much like to get, and so following that theme, Stoyan, this is one of the things I was going to show off later on in the agenda, but I'm working with Launchpad IP they really want to tokenize intellectual property documents. And so we're building a series of prototypes, and they are funding all of the development of the mutable token stuff. So being able to attach changeable data to a token. And so this is where we're at with it. We've got this, it's at token.fullstack.cash, and you can put in a token ID and it will give you back this data. Now, every token has this Genesis. Let me make this bigger. Every token has this Genesis data. So this is new. We just added this. So this will give you like the raw token Genesis information. And then if it follows this specification that I just updated, which is in our PSF specifications repository, it's number 2 on SLP mutable data. I just updated this. This app will try to retrieve the mutable and the immutable data. So there's a section where you can link to an IPFS document for immutable data. So if this was a piece of art, you would record like the date it was created, the artist, all the stuff about the artwork that's never going to change. And then in the mutable data section is stuff that you would change, that changes over time, like perhaps ownership. Like this would perhaps could function as a certificate of authenticity. The artist would retain the key that lets them update the mutable data, and then the person who buys the artwork, represented by the NFT, would go to the artist and say, hey, can you give me a certificate of authenticity? Can you update the mutable data to reflect that I am now the owner of this? And that's the opportunity for the artist to claim a commission, which is usually in a lot of artwork, but historically has never been enforced. I've talked to several artists who have had these commissions built into their sales contract, but they have no way of enforcing them. And so this is sort of where we're at. And then this is an example of the icon. So this token icon is called out here. So it's just downloading that artwork and displaying it here. So if the mutable data includes a property called token icon, then this app will attempt to go fetch it and display it right here. So coming back to Stoyan's decentralized DNS based on these tokens, the mutable data will actually, that sort of architecture of finding the children, that's baked into the SLP specification. So you actually don't need any of this information. But if you wanted to explicitly call it out, the mutable data would be one way to do that. But the point is having like a Swiss Army knife of just having like multiple ways to skin the cat.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay, well, that was actually the next thing on the agenda, so I'm glad we covered that. So so tokens.fullstack.cash is the app that we're building to sort of, as it's like a diagnostic tool to display these tokens with mutable data. And then but the specification that actually describes how this all works is on Git for anybody who wants to look at it. It's on Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group in a repository called specifications, and it's PS002 for SLP mutable data. So I just updated this. It has the step-by-step, what this program is actually doing in order to retrieve the data, and then what the mirror image of the program is when you create the token, which is also in an NPM package. If anyone wants to create tokens with mutable data, it's SLP mutable data is the name of the JavaScript library on NPM that allows you to do that. And if you go to the repository, there's a directory with examples for creating your own tokens with mutable data. The examples probably need to be updated. A lot of the stuff's in flux. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm very excited. So because this ties in very nicely with the DEX. Like you can create an NFT to represent, whatever you want with both mutable and immutable data, and then you can sell that NFT on the DEX. That's what I'm really working towards.
Oh, are you able to sell NFTs on the DEX now?
Getting very close. I mean, technically, yes, it's difficult, but yes, like we have achieved it, and now the goal is to make it far easier than it is right now.
Totally
I already shared my thoughts on this in Telegram. So yeah, it will be a good idea to have like URL inside this ID path, like. Not only the hash, because we don't know, after several years, maybe there will be no IPFS, there will be something else, or now these QM hashes, if you see them, okay, it's like IPFS, but yeah, there's version 2 already, URL is different, so it will be good to have this like IPFS : like /
Yeah, he's right. I was just going through the data structure of IPFS today, and because one question we had is like, why is Pinata giving you a QM? Well, I found out that the reason is that's version 0, and the QM represents a base 58 encoding algorithm, whereas like the BABY represents base 32. So like, and I think that like Stoyan's right, they're now on to version 2 of that, and how it breaks it up. And they're trying to make it so that, yes, you can still read version 0 and version 1, but yeah, you're exactly right. Who knows if they're on version 4 and you made something on version 1 and now it's not readable by somebody's IPFS.
Yeah, I appreciate that, you guys. That is actually valuable feedback. It's and I'm going to update the specification to reflect that. So just anybody who's watching this trying to figure out what we're talking about. I can visually show this. So right here in the immutable data, notice that it starts with QM, so that's an IPFS content ID version 0. And I struggled whether I should just put the CID in there and the reason I hesitated about this is because CIDs are self-describing. It's a bit into the weeds there, but they actually they don't. They're somewhat future-proofed in that you can sort of interrogate that CID and ask it what are you, and so that's why I hesitated putting IPFS : / which it sounds like is probably the better thing to do. So we'll do that. And also, here in the mutable data, now this is mutable data, I can change this, which is why I didn't hesitate to put an actual URL with a gateway included there, because the gateway can change.
Mhm.
Because it's mutable data, this can be updated. But for instance, cannot be updated. It's immutable. So we need to think very carefully about how we do that. And so, yeah, I agree with you guys that putting in IPFS : / to make it explicit that this is an IPFS CID.
Yeah, because how to say, in the moment, everybody likes a lot IPFS, but it's not perfect. It's already have a lot of bad points. So SIA, for example, is valid options. And we can have, for example, the P2W pay to write database here, P2WS, and put some other hash there, and you can use our database to keep this data. So yeah, prefix will say the resolver, the front end, what exactly this thing is, because it's not very clear only from the hash itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, this is a perfect example of why we have these meetings. It's great to get this kind of feedback from you guys.
Well, we appreciate it, Chris.
Okay, and so I just wanted to also let you guys know, or the wider community know, that our pace of innovation has been sort of just going at this breakneck speed because we got these grants from Avalanche and eCash GNC, and so we've got Gary and Daniel. They've been just working, and that's slowing down now. Daniel is now, one reason why things are slowing down is that, let's see, Dwayne makes a good point. Hard note to, So Cool Cleaner concurs with your guys' input. So the what was I going to say? So we've been building the decks. Daniel is now working for Launchpad IP. He's working full time on the mutable data stuff and their goals for tokenizing intellectual property. Part of the reason for that is that it was a good fit, and part of the reason for that is that the PSF just isn't generating any cash flow yet. So, anybody who's been holding the PSF token has noticed that the token price has gone down quite a bit because we've had money going out and very little money coming in. And so I needed to stop the bleeding, and so that meant we needed to get Daniel off-boarded. And so they were very thankful to take him. It was a good fit. And so he'll be working. It's Launchpad IP is a member of the PSF. They own PSF tokens. They're not, they don't participate. I'm essentially their representative in these kinds of meetings. So he's not gone. He's just slightly different role. And then Gary's done an excellent job with the Avalanche side of things, but we hit a snag with NFTs. And we're also, their grant was like half up front and half at the end. So, it's great, but that other half of that grant, we can't actually utilize that money. So we've got a bit of a cash flow problem. But then the other reason is that we're basically done with the prototyping phase of the decks. And now we need to build develop it into production. And so that's why I've been focused. I have been focused, and I will continue probably for the rest of this year to focus almost exclusively on the DEX and the technologies that the DEX depend on. Just because I believe that's our key to future revenue and cash flows, and being able to pay for additional development.
Well, and you have an onboarding mechanism into the PSF token through BCH right now, and the PSF token is the utility that will fuel the DEX, correct?
Right. Exactly.
And so, right, it's at this point in time, if you were to create an onboarding mechanism with AVAX and eCash, they would be separate tokens on those chains because the bridges aren't out there to go across. I mean, they're built, but they're not readily accessible to go back and forth with them. So,
right. Well, so this is probably a good segue into the roadmap discussion that I wanted to have with you guys. We can circle back around, and I can give a status update on the DEXs. But yeah, so to speak to what you were just saying, Aaron. So there's two ways that I think the PSF token could significantly increase in value. One is the DEX, which is like I said, it's going great, and in order to place an offer or a counter offer on the DEX, you have to burn 0.01 PSF tokens. And so if we get the DEX up to scale, there will be a very steady and pronounced burning of PSF tokens, and that will take tokens off the market and increase the price of the tokens that are on the market. So that'll create a very steady and robust demand for PSF tokens just by itself. But then we also have the bridges, and this was a project that was funded by a member of Ava Labs, it was just an individual, not actually Ava Labs, but it's what led to the Ava Labs grant for the DEX. And so that is code complete, but it's not in production. And that lets you move tokens between the Avalanche X chain and the SLP tokens on the BCH chain. So we plan to leverage that. That's part of why we're slowing down, is that the DEX works is in terms of a proof of concept, and now it just needs to be polished. And so that's largely and that's kind of a one-man job. Like it's hard to delegate a lot of that work because it requires attention to detail. And so my plan is to get sort of a really nice user interface finished for BCH, port that code over to Avalanche, get that all working in Avalanche, fork the BCH DEX to work on eCash. And so we'll have 3 working DEXs on 3 chains, but they can't talk to one another. And that's where the bridges come in. So then we could build a bridge for the PSF token across all these chains. And I think like what I'm trying to get to, like the focal point of all of this is a minting council. We need to set up a group of people with a multi-signature wallet that is in charge of issuing new tokens and thereby managing the number of PSF tokens in circulation with no central point of failure. And it's also really important to me that there's skin in the game, and right now what that looks to me is probably 2,000 PSF tokens to be on the minting council. You would provide proof of burn of like 2,000 PSF tokens. Those numbers can change, but just roughly that's kind of where my head's at right now. And then I also want it to be anonymous. So we would use the end-to-end and encrypted messaging that we've developed in the PSF BCH wallet. So be able to join the minting council anonymously, but prove that you have skin in the game, and then be able to coordinate the minting council over encrypted messaging so that people can keep their anonymity. That, like I said, like those specifics are all, this is a discussion, but just that's sort of where my head's at. But if we did that, if we could achieve that, then we could have a token that cannot be tampered with. It can't be forged, and it can't be inflated. there's people with skin in the game who have incentive to maintain the value of that token. And if we had that, then the PSF token could become a medium of value exchange. So it could become, it's not so much that people would want to acquire PSF tokens and hold them, but they would need to use them to move value across chains.
Yeah. So I see several things here, and let me try to break them down one by one. As far as the minting council goes, yeah, I'm in line with that. I'm on board with that. I think you probably are. We need to decide, okay, is it 3 of 5? Is it 4 of 7 for signatures to mint new tokens? Because if somebody goes dark, we don't want things to not be able to be minted. Is it going to be an NFT that is the target for the wallet so that the minter can be passed on? If, like they just decide, I can't, keep up with this, I'm going to pass it on to somebody else, those are questions I have there.
Exactly.
And then,
those are good. Those are the same questions I have. I mean,
yeah.
I can answer some of them, but those are exactly the questions that I want us to answer as a group. I don't, I have thoughts that I would love to share, but by no means do I want to dictate how this is all going to work.
This anonymity stuff is a little like a double-edged sword, because this means that somebody can open the 3 wallets and get the whole, the power of the minting tokens for themselves. So I'm not sure if it's so good idea. Like, it's good to know who is minting the tokens. Like, I mean, if there's like a multi-sig wallet, you cannot, like, for example, put some guy in the jail and everything will stop, because it still will have the other people to mint. But if it's anonymous, like Elon Musk can open the 3 wallet and he will get the power to get the, to mint as much token as he wants.
Yeah, so I think you're right. We have to think very carefully about this, and we have to make sure that all the incentives are aligned properly. So just to talk about that attack vector. So some of my thoughts there, and this is no means exhaustive, but some of the things I've thought through there is, so if we had essentially a buy-in of 2,000 like you have to provide proof that you burned 2,000 PSF tokens, then the minting council could send that address an NFT and to act as sort of a homing beacon. And so with that homing beacon, that person can now receive end-to-end encrypted messages because we know what Bitcoin Cash address holds the NFT, and we can send messages to that address. And then in terms of a person, let's say, what we're talking about is a Sybil attack, where someone has enough keys to essentially mint as many tokens as they want. The minting council, and at least in my, again, this is all discussion, I'm not dictating anything, but the minting council would not be authorized to mint tokens willy-nilly. They would only mint tokens when we have a vote and at the direction of the VIP membership. So that VIP membership would still be, at the top of the org chart, and then the minting council would only mint tokens at their direction. And if someone, and sort of like the nuclear option, if someone Sybil attacked it, first of all, they'd have to burn a bunch of PSF tokens to get to that level where they could mint tokens. And if they minted tokens willy-nilly, that would be, very detectable. And then in a worst case scenario, we could just create a new token, kick that person out, create a new token, airdrop a new token. And that wouldn't be convenient, but we're talking about an extreme situation here, which should hopefully not happen. The biggest threat there is to the token liquidity app, being able to drain the token liquidity app. And I'm I'm kind of thinking that we should get rid of the token liquidity app once we have the DEX up and running. We could still, basically anybody could run their own token liquidity app at that point. But the token liquidity app like worries me because it is a central point of attack, and we need to, if we can get rid of that central point of attack, then there isn't a huge threat to someone just to the attack vector of someone getting enough keys to mint PSF tokens willy-nilly, because there would be a significant time lag between that happening and them being able to do anything with the tokens. And during that time lag, we could kick them out and airdrop a new token and switch the software over to the new token. It's not a perfect solution, and I'm still working through it. There's holes there, but that's just kind of where my head's at.
What
Yeah, and
about like,
also if we go on the other spectrum of this thing, what if we don't have enough people to mint the tokens? Like nobody don't volunteer, so there's no incentivizing or whatever.
Yeah. So I think it would be good. Like one of the requirements of being on the minting council would be that we do key rotation every 3 months. We basically throw away the old keys and generate new keys. And anybody who doesn't show up to that quarterly meeting to participate in the ceremony doesn't get a key. You can still have the NFT and you can come back later, but if like essentially like you have to check, like it's a responsibility and you have to check in every 3 months.
well, I think we talked about this before where, getting new keys could also be something where you burn the NFT. And so you have proof of burn of the NFT, you get airdropped the one for now. I mean, this is where we're talking about NFTs being a utility and not so much like this object that you hold and sell, So you burn the NFT, proof of burns at the address, airdropped a new NFT for minting, essentially.
Yeah, that could be part of the ceremony, part of the key
No,
rotation.
my point was anti-Sibyl attack. What if somebody, in order to prevent minting the tokens, just there's not enough people who can do the minting. Like you distribute every 3 months, like 5 keys, but there's no 3 real guys, so the minting cannot happen. So everything is stuck.
I've got an idea on that. If you're talking about having the VIP section above, right? And you could have them always have one of the keys to be that extra person to kick it over. You could set that up in a multi-sig if you wanted to, so that, VIP certain amount of VIPs would have to vote to cast that, but it could be that emergency one. So like Stoyan's saying, we don't have 3 guys to mint. Well, that's where the VIP overarch of the DAO would come in and say, we need to mint. We've said we're going to mint. We've given the instructions to mint to the minting council. We don't have enough signatures to mint. So we're going to pull out our signature, our key, and we're going to be the 3rd signature to mint. I don't know, just throwing that out.
I don't know what the right solution is yet. We don't need to come up with that in this meeting, but I think that we can come up with a solution and a process that we can write down. So my thoughts on that is that I personally have a lot of skin in this game. I have a lot of tokens. So I plan on having just below the minimum threshold to mint tokens myself. Because if the state came and black bagged me and took my keys, I wouldn't want them to have enough to mint tokens. So I would want to have just slightly less than the amount that I would need, so that they'd still need the cooperation of 2 or 3 people to mint tokens, or that I would, just as that's my personal goal. So that would largely mitigate this issue, but because the nuclear option is always to just create a new token and airdrop it and fork the code. It's not something we want to do on a regular basis, but it is always an option.
Yeah. The other question I have too is that, all right, PSF is going to become the utility that fuels the dexes and the bridges.
Mhm.
And it would be nice that somebody doesn't even like right now, it's got to kind of be the step of I'm going to go get PSF tokens, then I'm going to participate in a DEX exchange in which the PSF token is burned. It'd be very nice, say I'm on BCH doing tokens, and then part of that function is buying a PSF token and burning it right there. So the end user doesn't have to go through all those steps. The token is still used, the token is still burned, it still helps increase the value. But for the end user, they're not even seeing any of those steps.
Yeah. Normal users don't need to know or care about. I mean, all they would need to know is, okay, I have Bitcoin Cash and I want to cash that out into, say, a stable coin on Avalanche. There's one step where they have to buy PSF tokens and then send them across the bridge to buy the stable coin. So they would go BCH, PSF, stable coin.
Yeah.
And that's all they need to know or care about. Like, they don't need to know anything about the governance or minting or anything like that.
And so you want to shut down the liquidity app, but what is the process that people are going to go through to acquire the PSF token to use in the DEX if the liquidity app is shut down?
Yeah. So again, I haven't fully thought through this, but what I am thinking of is, right now we're cutting corners because the token's not worth a lot. There's not a lot of people involved. We're not worth anybody's time to mess with us right now.
Mhm.
But in this world that we're projecting, where the PSF token becomes, very valuable utility token, that's not going to be the case. And so one thought I had, this might not be the best thought, but one thought I had is the VIP group, or possibly the Minting Council, or both, could designate 2 trusted members, and this would be kept secret. I don't know who they'd be. Preferably not me, because I'm too visible. But 2 people that have access to the token liquidity app. And another option here is that the token liquidity app could be tweaked so that you could send it transactions with op return for like remote instructions. So this is another thing. So like the Minting Council with their multi-signature wallet could create a transaction with an op return code in it to tell the token liquidity app to shut itself down, or distribute all the funds to bleed it and send it to a new address, like in an emergency situation. And then the token liquidity app would only listen to it if it was signed by the multi-signature wallet. It would ignore any other anything with an op return otherwise. So that's one option, to have this sort of remote control, like, so the Minting Council can have a remote control of the token liquidity app. So that would protect it, like in an extreme situation. But then on the day-to-day operation, two people could have access to it. So if one person disappears, there is a redundant backup. And so the way I'm thinking about this is, like, one person's not enough, but you want to keep it as small as the number of people as small as possible, so that if any funny business happens, you have a limited number of people to point the finger at. So I think 2 is the right number in terms of actually operating the token liquidity app, because it's important. It provides liquidity for the PSF token. Again, like, there might be other. Those are just a couple thoughts I've had. I'm sure there's other ways to approach this.
I think the Aaron questions maybe was like, in order to put an order on the DEX, you need to burn PSF. But how to see? But you don't have PSF tokens, right? So you need to put the BCH or something on the DEX, so it will return you PSF. But in order to do this order, you need PSF. So it's like chicken egg problem, maybe.
Right, and that's why I'm not entirely convinced that we can get rid of the token liquidity app. We might need the token liquidity app to solve that chicken and egg problem.
Well, that's where I think the token liquidity app can come into play automatically if coded right. So like I put in an order, I have, like he said, I got BCH, I want to get this token, or I've got this token, I want to get this token. Then I put in the order and right, and then somebody receives the order. And at that time of transaction, one of the things that happens in that stack is a purchase from the liquidity app and a burning, like in that order, so that those steps aren't me going, I got the PSF tokens now I'm doing it. It's literally like I'm on the DEX. I want token B. I've got token A. And then when I hit the transaction, what happens is some BCH from my wallet goes and buys PSF token, then burns the token right away. And then the trade happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to do it. I haven't looked in it too thoroughly, but Vin Armani, who created the swap protocol that the DEX is based on, he has an extension for doing a token. Right now, you can't swap one token for another token directly because you can only have one type of token per transaction. So you would need 2 transactions. And Vin has a protocol for doing that. Yeah, it's basically generally what you just described.
Yeah.
But we already have multiply op returns, right? There was a change in the protocol recently. So I think this restriction is already removed. You cannot have 2 tokens. Or it's because SOP must always be the first one, right?
Yeah, so you can have multiple op returns, but the SLP indexer will ignore them because the SLP information has to be the first output and it has to be an op return. And then any additional op returns, it just gets ignored.
Okay. And there's also still a size problem with the multiple op returns. Just because you can do them doesn't mean that the size limit that you can put in the op return increased,
Yeah, but I mean, it's 220 bytes, so you can fit quite a bit of information, especially like if you're not like maximizing the SLP, like you can send, I think, 19 outputs in a single SLP transaction. So, and that's like maximizing that single op return. So if you just do a normal transaction that involves 1 or 2 outputs, then you've still got a lot of room for additional op returns.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that if there was a way to do that where I'm not even aware that I'm using the PSF token.
Yeah.
Right.
That'd be ideal.
And then it doesn't necessarily have to be from a liquidity app either, because say I'm a PSF token holder, maybe I put a certain amount of tokens up on the DEX for a trade, right? And because I want to make money off of the PSF utility token, maybe like a more steady, I'm not mooning stuff. It's just a steady income stream. And so when somebody goes to trade token A for token B, they're also looking, if the liquidity app is shut down, they're looking on the DEX for people that have put up PSF tokens for trade for that purpose. And so the transaction would then go make the trade for that, burn, and make the other trade. But to the end user, and maybe there are multiple transactions there, but for the end user, it's literally like I hit transaction 1, okay, hit transaction 2, they click 2 buttons, they've got a trade.
Yeah. So there's 2 things you said there that I want to expand on. Like, one is this sort of not forcing the user to care about PSF tokens. So like for instance, with the DEX UI, you have to have some PSF tokens in your wallet, but that's it. Like you're not like telling it how many PSF tokens to burn or anything like that. Like you just need to have some like not even a whole token, like some tiny amount of PSF in your wallet. And then you don't even have to think about it after that to use the DEX, like unless you run out, then you need to get some more. So really trying to minimize the cognitive load on end users. So that's one thing. And kind of spacing on the other thing, but Oh yeah. So here's an example that I think I threw out in a previous meeting is I would love to work with the Dash Core group. If they created a Dash SLP token that they guaranteed that they would exchange for, basically they don't even need to do anything other than just create the token and manage the supply of tokens on the Bitcoin Cash chain. And if they just did that one thing, then anyone could build a bridge between the Dash token on BCH and the actual Dash coin on their blockchain. And so they wouldn't need to manage bridges. You could have 10 bridges, but because there's one Dash token, there's one official Dash token. That's what's needed. And then the bridges can actually be decentralized. Anyone can run a bridge and they can all compete on like the transaction fee they charge to go across the bridge. So you could buy a Dash token on the exchange and then find a bridge, one of many, and then transfer that token and get Dash, to your actual Dash wallet on the Dash chain. And so that same idea applies here is if we have a minting council that manages one official PSF token, then that token can be used in many different ways. And that's why we may not need the token. I mean, I think we are going to need the token liquidity app in some form to solve that chicken and egg problem. But as long as we have a minting council who manages the official PSF token, that token can be used in a lot of different ways. And as a medium of value exchange in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Stoyan, thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think we need to completely shadow the using on PSF, because even now the Uniswap, the 1 inch, all of them, they show how many of the uni tokens or like what was chi token you have inside, and depending on this you get some benefits like smaller taxes or something. So making how to see like complete just BCH to Dash without people seeing the PCF, it's maybe not needed to be so transparent. You just how to see. Ask people, okay, you need PSF tokens in your wallet. You don't need to do anything with them. Just put them there.
Mm-hmm.
They will be showed on the desk. You have 100 PSF in your token. And you do Dash to, for example, something.
Mm-hmm.
So this token can be burnt or done, but completely not showing there is nothing PSF. You just go from Dash to BCH. It's maybe not needed to be so shadowed.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, and I think you in my mind, you're bringing up, these are not equivalent whatsoever, but from a marketing standpoint, it is, you could equate it similarly to purchasing gas, only you hold the gas in your wallet. I know it's a token, but because it's a utility that makes this stuff function, it's
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 gas.
People are so used
gas,
to
it's basically gas.
I have to purchase gas, which that's space and computing power on a block, but
it's the same business model as Chainlink. So I don't know if you guys have seen Trueflation. So Stefan Rust, who was the ex-CEO of Bitcoin.com, he's representing Trueflation, and they just won this $100,000 award from Balaji for creating a decentralized, censorship-resistant measure of inflation, which is currently measuring 12.5%. And their data feed is on Chainlink. You can't get the data anywhere but Chainlink. There's no REST API that you can query. There's no account that you can open somewhere you have to use a smart contract and get the data through Chainlink. And in order to do that, you have to have link tokens. You have to purchase the data essentially with the link token. That's their business model. And so I've been trying to look into it a little deeper, because that's essentially what we're talking about here is you want to use the PSF DEX, you got to have PSF tokens.
Yeah. And then I think the question goes to, okay, is a liquidity app needed to facilitate that, or will the DEX itself having PSF out on the DEX be enough to facilitate that? Because when you're talking about minting council and a minting wallet, you're going to mint all these tokens to the minting wallet, and then how are those getting distributed if there's no I'm spacing out exactly what we're talking about, and no liquidity app. There we go. How are
Yeah.
those going to get distributed without a liquidity app? Are they going to be something like, I need PSF tokens, and then they're going to be open for trade on the DEX? How's that going to happen?
Yeah, that's the thing. We may not be able to get rid of the token liquidity app because of that chicken and egg problem. But if we have a minting council that is in charge of maintaining the official token, anyone can run a token liquidity app at that point.
Yeah.
So we could decentralize the token liquidity app. Yeah, and so in terms of distributing the token, like the minting council would only create tokens at the direction of the VIP group, which would vote on, we'd go back to our voting thing that we used to do where we'd have a proposal, airdrops, people would vote, it'd be yes or no. And then if it's a yes, then the minting council would be authorized to bring new tokens into existence. So I wouldn't want the council to be in the hopefully we still have a long ways to go before, if we do maintain the token liquidity app, this whole time I've been trying to get the token liquidity app to this point where the peg gets like the hard peg to BCH, but we got about 220 BCH to go until we're there. So we got a lot. So we actually shouldn't be bringing any new PSF tokens into existence, for a long time. But we definitely want to retain the ability to do that when we need it.
Now, when they are brought into existence, is they're going to be brought into the multi-sig wallet, right?
Yeah.
How does the distribution happen from that point?
Well, actually, no, not necessarily. The minting baton is what exists in the multi-sig wallet.
Okay.
But when you actually use that to create new tokens, in that transaction, you can specify where you want them to land. They don't have to land in the multi-sig wallet.
Oh, okay. So they could then land in the liquidity app, basically.
Yeah. Or whatever wallet is in the proposal that was passed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm glad that a lot of food for thought and a lot of tech that needs to be developed before we can really. But my main concern at this point has been like coming up with a theoretically possible framework.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty close, especially with the ability to do multi-sig wallets and the end-to-end encrypted messaging system, which also uses the pay-to-write database. So I think everything that we've discussed is possible, and we just have to be careful with the incentives and the architecture.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm a little glad that things are slowing down because you guys have been moving so fast. I'm like, I can't even keep up.
Yeah.
with everything that I've been doing. I'm like, I need to dive into this, but it's like 4 or 5 videos out a week.
Yeah. And that's just it. Is like, I'm really putting a lot of focus right now on documentation, and then not just churning out videos, but putting videos in like a structured, watch this one and then watch this one and then watch that one.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, one question I have. Okay. So I load up that HTML page from the paper wallet. I customize it myself, put in my own address, like that. It's loaded. And when can I use the PSF BCH wallet from the client or command line to write the new CID in there? Like, do I need to do a transaction, or is it like the BCH write?
So I sent you a link to the repository that has that HTML page that looks it up. there's another in the root directory of that repository. There's another JavaScript file called publish.js, and
Oh,
that
okay.
and that's actually a script. When I want to do an update, I run npm run pub, which builds the static site and uploads it to web3.storage. So uploads it to the Filecoin blockchain. And so it's that publish.js script that takes the compiled site and uploads it to Filecoin, and then pushes out a CID, and then writes the CID to the Bitcoin Cash blockchain.
Oh, like all, wow.
Yeah,
That's
all in one command. Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Do I just need to input my wallet and then like load in my mnemonics?
Yeah,
Like,
so it has a with private key, and so
Yeah.
I keep that as an environment variable, and so
Okay.
you'll see in the code it'll call out like process.env.with, which is like the with. So
Yeah.
so you just have to create an environment variable called with that holds your private key,
mm,
and
yep.
then that script will run.
That is way easier than I was making it. I was
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty
all
smooth.
right, I need to, I'm gonna go to the command line wallet. Now, how do I write into the transaction for this? You know, like the new CID, like the fact that it makes the new CID, does the transaction all in one. That's awesome. I thought I'd have to like go step by step, like re-upload, got the CID, plug it into
Yeah.
my file, or plug it into, then write a transaction, and now I've got the transaction, you know.
Yeah. So someone was just asking me about this. Like, so I have the uncensorablepublishing.com, and all that information on there is pretty much not valid anymore because this new process is so much simpler and
Yeah.
smoother. It's just like, okay, one command, just update, you know.
And it resolves faster than IPNS, right?
Yeah. I think IPNS takes about 30 seconds, and that lookup on the blockchain takes about 5, which is still,
Mhm.
you know, I like it's right on the threshold of being acceptable
Yeah,
in my mind.
yeah. And
But it could be sped up in different ways. But
well, is it like the lookup from the blockchain that can be sped up, or like a redundant pinning that would help speed it up?
yeah, there's a couple things. There's a couple things that could happen there, like because it's making like a handful of API calls, and that could all
Mhm.
be refined into a single API call. And
Okay.
then also like it just doesn't feel right to like look up something on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain to then go to IPFS. It's like it almost just seems like it'd be better if it just spun up an IPFS node in the browser and then used IPNS to look it up. But I'd have to actually test that and see if IPNS is, because I've heard they've made improvements, but
Yeah.
I haven't tested this in a long time to see how fast a node can connect to the network and look something up with IPNS. Like that's historically been a very slow process.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it, and I'll try IPNS as well. I'm just looking for ways to create some websites that I know aren't going to be taken down for people, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then resolving those websites becomes an issue. How fast are they? I've thought maybe like combining web 2 and web 3, where I have the CID, but then I utilize like a CDN from Amazon to have that preloaded and distribute, you know, that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then all I would need to do to change, I could have the DNS kind of pointing at the CDN, and then all I'd need to do on the back end is change the CID that the CDN is looking at, you know. So, but then again, I'm also using a third-party CDN to do that. So,
yeah, and that's the thing. Pulling the data from Filecoin, there's a bit of a lag there, and so I think the fastest way to do it is to set up your own gateway, because then you have control of the lookup time and the pinning. So it depends on the use case. You know, if you have a very specific app that you want to load very quickly, you could do that. But if you just want to load like generic stuff off of Filecoin, there's really no getting around that lag.
now when things are pinned to a local machine, they're not coming from Filecoin, but then the other way is to store it on Filecoin and then it's automatically pinned when it's on Filecoin? Is that how it works?
Well, so Web3.storage is so Filecoin's just for storage, and then there's like the retrieval is like another whole complex thing to it. So what Web3.storage does is when you upload a piece of data to Web3.storage, it finds 3 miners and it does redundant storage with 3 different miners. And then as part of that service of the miners who are part of the Web3.storage service, they also pin the content and make sure with IPFS and make sure it's available over IPFS. So Filecoin is really like, you think of it as like a tape drive. It's really slow, cold storage for data. IPFS is the fast, the actual retrieval like network. And so you can't have Filecoin without IPFS. You have to have both. You can have just IPFS by itself, but Filecoin doesn't really do anything for you unless you also have an IPFS node to like serve that data once it's retrieved. So the Web3.storage, they do the 3 redundant services that also provide it over IPFS, but then I will pin it on a local IPFS node, maybe a couple, one I have in the cloud, one I have at home. And one of the things I wanted to show with, were like Stoyan's DNS idea that he did for the hackathon with NFTs and group tokens, that could be applied to IPFS hashes where you create like, let's say, let's take it for example, like the WikiLeaks collateral murder video, that the government would rather not have people distribute. You could turn that into an NFT, just like this one, that has whatever amount of information you want in either the immutable or mutable data. And so all the software has to do is look up the token ID and then pull down the immutable or mutable data, and then in this data you could have an array of like, here it is on YouTube, here it is on Library, here it is on Filecoin, here it is on Rumble, all the different like places where you can access this information. That's what I'm hoping to do. I want to create a series of NFTs around my videos, particularly the OPSEC ones, and do it that way. Upload them on multiple platforms, and then have one token that shows you where to get all the different places where you can get the content. And then if as long as that IPFS hash CID is easily available, then people can voluntarily just pin that, like if it's a piece of valuable content, like the collateral murder videos, like people can just be like, oh yeah, I want to help protect this content. I'll pin it on my local node. Well, they don't have to ask permission. They can just look it up.
I would recommend anybody in the PSF, if you're not comfortable with the command line, just download the desktop client of IPFS and spin up a node and start pinning. You can pin some of the PSF websites that are on IPFS right now. Yeah. So, and that'll help speed things up. That's one thing you can do that's very easy, and it'll take like 5 minutes to do. So, yeah.
I wanted to give a quick update on the DEX before we wrap this up. So if people go to dex.fullstack.cash, they can see a demo. There's that'll take you to this splash page in the continued demo because it's got some caveats. And you can actually see, this is what it looks like. It looks just like the web wallet. Now, this is a read-only view. You can't buy or sell tokens here, but you can see the tokens that are available for sale. And right now it's just a bunch of Trout tokens that I put up for testing. And so that's kind of cool. People can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. And then I also wanted to show you guys, let's see what Cool Cleaner said. Chapwood index site was taken down. It was clear the world needed an uncensored place to track information over time. Chapwood uses this too. Somehow it just disappeared. Yeah. Yep. Disappearing content is a problem. But I've been working on the user interface so there's this orders tab, which lets you take an order. So there's the take button over here on the right. And so you find a token that you want to buy and you hit take, and then it generates a counter offer. But then there's how do you actually list a token for sale? Well, so far that's just been like a command line script that you run. But the what I've been working on the last few days is this user interface. So I've modified the tokens tab to add the sell button. So you click on the sell, you have your wallet and you send SLP tokens to it. And now there is a sell button, and you click the sell button, and then it opens up this form, this modal, and then you can say how many of them you want to sell and what price you want to sell them at per token, and you hit sell, and then you'll get this confirmation that, hey, it's okay, your offer has been written to the system, and here is the CID on the PayToWrite database that represents your token offer. And so I'm pretty happy with how this UI is shaping up. It's pretty smooth. I'm actively working on pushing this out right now, and then I'll create a video just sort of walking through how to use it.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty excited about this. It's getting really close to, being usable. There's been several token transactions, and no one has complained about anything yet. I mean, like, they don't always go through because the other party's computer has to be online to see the counter offer come through and react to it by finalizing the trade. But it's just so awesome having this trustless and atomic token protocol that, like, the money is never out of your hands. It's never out of your control until the moment that the trade is finalized. So there's just no way that someone can take your money, or the trade can get stuck in some way. If you send a counter offer and you get tired of waiting for the other side to take the other side, you just spend that UTXO, and everything automatically that's how the order is either on the system until it's fulfilled, or until the UTXO gets spent, and then the order gets deleted because the UTXO isn't valid anymore. So it's just awesome. It's making me feel really confident, because we can actually have a shitty user UI, and it doesn't matter because the underlying protocol protects you from getting into any like sketchy situation. And I love that.
That's great. Can't wait. I mean, this is exciting stuff, and being able to do this token swap is, I think people have yet to realize what tokens can do. So yeah,
particularly NFTs. Okay, well, so it's been about an hour and 20 minutes. We've gone through the agenda. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we wrap this up?
I think I'm good.
Is there any ways like people can get PSF tokens without buying them? Do you need any help with some kind of bounties, or what's the case?
Yeah, good question. We are working on bounties. And in fact, I've had a couple people inquiry about the bounties. There is, what we need to do is set up incentivized people to, cool cleaners coming in. What we need to do is set up, the holdup on the bounties right now is this metrics tracking app that once a day writes information to the PayToWrite database. And what that's going to do is that's going to be how we keep people honest with regard to the bounties. So let me actually I'll share my screen and I'll go to the bounties. Let's see. So the bounties are in a repository called bounties. And so I need to take this multi-segmenting down. That's been fulfilled. And but we're going to have these circuit relay and wallet hosting bounties. And so the wallet service is that global backend, incentivizing people to run that. And so what we need, what the tracking app needs to do is verify that those services are up and accessible and running for a certain, like for say 25 days out of a month, whatever we set the threshold to be. And so the bounties will get distributed based on the results of that tracking app every month, keeping everybody honest. And then same thing with the circuit relay hosting, that's also really important. And we need to just be able to track metrics around it to keep people honest. But these aren't up yet because, again, this is a sort of chicken and egg problem. Like, we need to have enough demand for our services to justify needing these services, which then will allow us to pay bounties because we'll have income coming in to essentially pay for all that. So the bounties are in. So the short answer that I should have started with is that no, there's no bounties available right now, but we have them in the works, and we just got to get a few things in place to make them available. Thanks for joining us, Aaron.
Yeah.
It's been great
Good to
meeting.
see ya.
Actually. Great information you guys try back and forth. So I appreciate all the work you guys have done. I hopefully would just want to be a part of it again. I mean, this is just fantastic.
They're at the office again, huh?
Yeah, the fake office.
Okay, well, if you guys don't have anything else, I'm gonna go ahead and take the live stream down, and we can continue to talk amongst ourselves in the Zoom meeting. All right, so anybody watching this, thank you for joining us.